This episode is sponsored by UPMC Altoona Elite Orthopedics. UPMC Altoona Elite Orthopedics and the UPMC Sports Medicine Concussion Program are proud to support youth sports across our region and proud to sponsor the high school football preview show on the Mirror TV YouTube channel. To learn more about their board-certified orthopedic surgeons, their specially trained concussion management experts, and the wide range of orthopedic conditions they treat, visit upmcaltoona.com/ortho. To schedule an appointment in one of their offices in Hollidaysburg, Ebensburg, or Bedford, call 814-889-3600. That's 814-889-3600. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Week 13 of the High School Football Show here on Mirror TV. We're in the stretch run. I guess we're down if we were a horse race. We're down about 4 games here, but our all-everything high school beat writer Mike Boydham's with us, and he's come up with a list for us to talk about here. We're going to try and not take up a good half hour of your time like Mike and I and Dan usually do. But the first game we're going to talk about, again, I'm Scott Franco from the Mirror. I can't believe I forgot to say that. Does that mean I have a big head and then I figure...
He just figures everyone knows who he is.
But I do have a big head. That was my nickname when I was little. You can ask my family about that. But anyways, the first game we're going to talk about here, and it's the big game Friday night. I guess it's the sequel. Will this be the 4th time they've played in 2 years? Wow.
Well, third, because they weren't in the same league last year.
Okay, that's right. Central's still in the... Anyways, Bedford versus Central at Tiger Stadium, 7 o'clock Friday night. The winner of this is going on to meet one of the teams from the West. I know that. Central, it's going to be hard. I'm going to think Bedford's going to be a big underdog again based on, or did you see something from that first game that makes you think?
Well, the one thing about it, and Coach Baker talked about this, was Bedford made 4 turnovers in the first half. They lost 41-27. I mean, that
might be the most points scored on Central this year, probably.
Yeah, Central does have the second best defense according to our stats behind Juniata Valley in our coverage area. Now, a couple of those turnovers were unforced. Central snapped the ball over their head on a punt, and Central recovered for a touchdown. And there were
Bedford snapped the ball.
Yeah, Bedford snapped. And then Bedford didn't cover on a kickoff. There was a kickoff, and the ball just laid there, and Central just came down and got it. So there was a couple plays there that Coach Baker doesn't feel like that's likely to happen again. And if Bedford can clean that up, there's no reason.
Right?
Yeah, I covered that game. There's no reason to believe this isn't going to come down to the very end. And if you remember, Bedford won last year in this playoff game. Now, Jeff Hohenstein was not available because he was hurt, but Bedford ended up going the whole way to the state semifinals.
They played that Central Valley.
Well, they played Central Valley from Whitfield. They beat Hickory in the round next. They'll play a team from District 10 in this next round. They still have to play their championship game. Slippery Rock and Grove City, I believe, are competing for the championship.
I'm curious, just from your memory, how did Central do against Swain? I mean, as far as did they contain him, or did he still have the number?
He still did all right. Now, he did not throw the ball out. In fact, actually, one of the things to point out is, we all have heard about Jeff Hohenstein is approaching the PIAA record for touchdown passes. He has 53 touchdown passes, only 2 interceptions.
As a junior.
You know where that last interception came against? Bedford.
Wow.
So, I mean, he only threw for 250 yards against Bedford. So that was one of his lower games. And it'll be interesting to see. Now, Central can still run the ball, and so can I think Mercury Swain can hurt you more with his running ability out of the pocket than he's going to hit some passes here and there, but I think Jeff Hohenstein, he's really developed into more of a passing quarterback but he can surprise you with the run too, as he did against Penn Cambry at a 46-yard touchdown.
On fourth down. See, and I actually did, just to compete with Michael, I tried to put a phone call in to a high school football coach that I'm related to, because I wanted to know if you could put a spy on Hohenstein, would that do anything? And I didn't know if Bedford or anybody this year has tried to do that, because if you can put a spy on him, maybe you can contain him. Because I know they do that, and I hate to compare this. They did that with Lamar Jackson. They said this year when the Ravens play, sometimes they will put a spy on him. And I thought, if you have a kid that's that good, do you have somebody on your defense? Doesn't Swain play linebacker?
Yeah, he does this year.
That's what Coach McGregor told us.
But I will tell you one thing, though. If you're putting one guy on Hohenstein, that's opening up somebody that's going to be, and they have 5 guys that they can throw to. And really, they have even Josh Biesinger isn't too high on our receiving list, but he caught a big pass last week too, and he's a senior. I mean, I think he's a senior, and he's a very talented player. And he doesn't even get a lot of pub because you got Devin Boyles, Parker Gregg, Ethan Eicher, Eli Lingenfelder. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah, if there was fantasy high school football, I think all Central's team would already been gobbled up by people that do that. Our next game we're going to talk about, and it's the game that Mike's going to be going to up in the District 10 area, Class 1A first round, Northern Bedford versus Reynolds. Mike probably knows more about Reynolds. I know Reynolds has really good high school wrestling, and I'm curious to how this game's, because I saw their records 7-3.
Well, they're 7-4, but most of their losses, if not all of them, are to higher classifications. They play a tougher schedule than the rest of the district, and that's kind of when the bracket came out. Cochranton was the top seed, but it was kind of assumed that Reynolds was probably the team to beat, and they did come out of it. They shut out Cochranton in the championship game.
And I got to think Northern Bedford's had that week off to get healthy. You would hope that could help them as well.
And Northern Bedford has won 7 games in a row. I mean, we've had Gary Black in here, and we talked about the tough stretch they had at the beginning with those tough games. So they've played some higher competition too. They feel like they're ready for this spot. Now, the other thing is, Reynolds is in Greenville, where this game is. It's not at their high school, but it's...
It'd be like Hollingsburg playing at Altoona.
Right. Okay. And Northern Bedford's looking at a 3-hour bus ride. So,
and you're looking at a 3-hour car ride.
Yes. Please pray for me. No deer.
We can give Mike Dan Eisberger a St. Christopher medal, which you give to, he's the patron saint of all travelers. Somebody should donate Mike, but I don't want to give mine because then I'll be driving without one.
Maybe I should wear this in the car.
Bring this in the car. There you go. Our next game, we're going to skip over here. I'm going to go to the Class 1A semifinals because we have, 3 of the 4 teams in here in our coverage area. Portage at Juniata Valley, BG at Homer Center. I know I'm sitting there thinking BG Juniata Valley is going to meet up in this one. But for us, how do you like Portage's chances in this one at Juniata Valley on Friday night?
Well, Portage played against Juniata Valley last year. It was actually at Portage in the quarterfinals, and it was not a good day for Mustang Nation. It was 43-7, and Coach Musser for Juniata Valley said, "Hey, this is still in their minds. I'm sure they're coming down to Juniata Valley. They remember that game last year, and." He thinks they have a lot of weapons. They have Heidler, they have Wolford at running back, they got Clore, and Miko has really been able to scramble around and create some opportunities for Portage. Now, when I talked to Coach Slonok, he said that they have to clean up the penalties. Portage has made a lot of penalties this year, including last week against West Shamokin. It's a little bit of the reason that game was right down to the wire. Interestingly enough, that was Juniata Valley's problem at the beginning of the year. If you remember, they played Tussey Mountain the first game of the year, won 20-2, but Coach Musser was really unhappy. I think they made 11 penalties and everything like that. So, both teams need to concentrate and make sure that taken care of, no pre-snap penalties or anything like that, so the offenses can run a little smoother.
And Portage stumbled down at the end of the season, their regular season, so they finally actually have a win to build off of going into this game.
Well, when I talked to their coach, he said, hey, we felt like we could have won 2 of those 3 games. He didn't think they could have beaten Windber. Obviously, Windber's very good. But, they used that as motivation. They talked about that at halftime in the West Shamokin game. They said, hey, we've let these other games slip away. Don't let this one slip away. And he said, if you can learn from something, then it's worth going through that to move on to the next thing.
And the next thing we're talking is BG at Homer Center. And just for those who've already seen the paper Wednesday morning, I took Homer Center, just they're home. And I keep thinking if any year is the year to get BG, it might be this. I'm looking at the stuff you talked about, the 2 guys that have combined for all that rushing yardage and touchdown. But, is that enough for Homer Center to beat BG?
I swear I just heard a couple of minutes ago on this tape that you said you're thinking it's going to be BG and Juniata Valley in the finals.
Well, I know.
But you picked Homer Center.
Well, because I had to cover both ends there and everything. But I think everybody's thinking BG, Juniata Valley.
Except you.
Except for me. But Homer Center, I'm looking at the stats that you put down there. That's an awful lot of rushing yards and touchdowns. But if this were at Mansion Park, I think I would have taken BG.
Well, last year BG beat them 48-13 in the championship game. But
was it close? Ever?
No, I will say this though. That was a different BG team, and if there's any team that's had success in the 1A playoffs against BG over the past decade, it's Homer Center. This is actually their 6th meeting since 2013. Homer Center is 2-3 against BG, which is pretty good considering
how good BG
been. And Homer Center's went to a state championship game. They have a great program with Coach Page down there. And they've been able to throw the ball and run the ball. Now, the one thing I would be concerned about if I was Homer Center is seeing last week against Purchase Line, Cooper Rother got going. Carson Kiesewetter threw for 3 touchdown passes. If those 2 guys are clicking, BG is going to be okay. And you also got to remember Devin Wyatt can kick a 50-yard field goal if he's needed. So that's another weapon that BG has if this game comes down to the end. But in all 5 of those games that they've played, they've never played at Homer Center. So this will be interesting to see what happens when they're playing down there.
Well, I'm curious too, if they're this one-dimensional as a running team, if BG just puts everybody up in the box and says, "Get and beat us with a quarterback," and they can't, then I think BG likes their chance.
They have thrown for over 1,000 yards too, so they can pass.
Okay. Our last game we're going to go to here is a number 8 seed playing a number 3 seed in the District 6-2A Championship, Forest Hills, Richland. Is this a Damon Crawley versus Kellen Stahl game? Does it look like?
Well, those are the 2 stars for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Crawley has 2,500 yards rushing. Stahl
for Forest Hills, yeah.
Stahl threw for 342 yards in the first half against Bellwood. He finished with, I think, 471 yards, and this is against Bellwood. This isn't against,
a team that's not doing very good.
Yeah, not against a team on the verge of losing their program or something. The one thing about these seeds, though, you see the 8 seed versus 3 seed. What are both these teams? They're both in the Laurel Highlands.
And they did not play each other this year.
They did not play each other this year or last year. So it's
tell everybody that the score the last time they played 2 years ago.
Well, that was a little bit lopsided.
Stahl would have been a sophomore then, right?
Yeah, that was
54-12. I found it.
Yeah, 54-12, and
Richland just is so good on.
They've been so good for so long, and even when Coach McGregor was here, he said, "Hey, the road through the district title is going to run through Richland. We've known that." And
did everybody know about Crawley going to be? Was he good last year?
He was good last year, but I think this has been really a breakout season for him.
We don't cover Forest Hills yet. I know who this kid is because when he's played teams in our area, he's just put up monster numbers.
Yeah,
I just can't believe it. But anyways, that's going to lead in. Speaking of numbers, good segue by me. Mike's stat of the week. I'm looking forward to. I wonder if that's what that little piece of yellow paper there
is.
Our stat of the week. Here's that cool sound effects part that Dan always does or get.
And I'll tell you what, it's a perfect segue because it's about Forest Hills coach.
Oh!
So Forest Hills coach is Justin Myers, and he spent 6 years before this. This is his 7th year. He coached at Cambria Heights. He coached at Forest Hills. Those previous 6 years combined, they won 7. He's won 7 games. This year, Forest Hills has won 7 games.
And he had to replace Don Bailey, which is kind of like having to replace. Well, he was a legend. It was kind of like you don't want to be the guy who follows the legend. You want to be the guy who follows the guy who follows the legend.
And they're back in the district championship game.
Good for him. Then speaking of good for him, now good for me, because Mike's most hated part of our segment are cool names.
I wanna know what's the name of the game.
And I've been told I was accused of putting too many Italians on there. What? So I looked around to see who we were playing in the area. So I picked up a kid from Reynolds, who Gary Black will see. His name is Trevor Lautzenheiser. Trevor Lautzenheiser. It sounds like a place where you could get schnitzel or some kind of kielbasa meal with a nice cold glass of beer. He's a senior tight end DN, Trevor Lautzenheiser. And then from Forest Hills, again, since they're playing here in the area, I love this name, Maddox Dombrowski. It says he's a wide receiver, DB freshman. I thought with a name like Dombrowski, you should be like a linebacker or a guard. But Trevor Lautzenheiser from Reynolds, Forest Hills is Maddox Dombrowski. Actually, if we would have thought about it, we could have put an ad on Mike's Yo-Yo. We could have maybe made some money for the show, like advertising.
Did you say something?
Hey, so we know we're going to be back, right? We should be back for week 14
Well, we're
because
guaranteed.
we at least be able to talk about the Class 1A finals.
Yep.
Because we're going to have somebody in that.
And somebody's going to win the Bedford Central game.
And somebody's going to win. So we at least have 2 more games for next week's show. We might just, maybe, I told Dan maybe we can get some kind of cartoon character to walk on the screen through computer graphics and introduce Mike and I. But for Mike Boyden, for Dan Eisenberg behind the camera, I'm Scott Franco. Thank you for watching this week. Take care, everybody.